So the two-year-old classifications serve up Churchill and Lady Aurelia as top colt and top filly. Graeme Smith from the BHA handicapping team. How big a surprise? I mean, it looked to me as though, you almost got there and they were almost the favourites to be top, weren't they?
They were the favourites to be top, Mike, but there are a lot of years when the press turn up to this event and we are crowning a champion that everyone has known will be champion since October. It wasn't the case this time around because we didn't even know when we approached our International Handicappers meeting in November exactly which horse would be top. It is Churchill this year at 122 and Lady Aurelia has had to settle for 121, a pound behind. She's narrowly missed out on being the first female champion since Ravenella back in 1987 shared the title with Warning. But she is the best two-year-old filly we've seen in more than a decade. I think it's been a reasonably strong year and a very strong year amongst the fillies.
Mark Bird of the Turf Club, I mean, Aidan O'Brien dominated totally. You had Churchill, obviously Caravaggio, who did a demolition job on the Coventry Stakes field at Ascot. Is it he's dominated to the extent that his horses were that much better in Ireland? Or is it concerned the fact that you look for the likes of J.S. Bolger and D.K. Weld in these classifications and you don't find them?
Yeah, I mean, you can argue that both ways, I suppose. On the one hand, yeah, I mean, the bigger stables like Bulgers and Dermot Weld haven't really had top two-year-olds this year, so there has been a void there. We have 17 horses rated 110 or more in Ireland, and 15 are trained by Aidan. So it's certainly lopsided from that point of view, but that doesn't happen every year, so I wouldn't base my entire judgment on just this year. So let's see what happens maybe in the years to come. But Churchill, I think, looking at Aidan's previous champions, he's had 9 champions. He's actually towards the lower end of that scale. He's joint 7th. So you couldn't call him sort of maybe one of his top horses, but equally he's only 4 pounds behind Aidan's best champion, which was Fazliev a number of years ago.
How hard is it sometimes to get a yardstick? I mean, Lady Aurelia was, to the eye, was probably as impressive a two-year-old winner at Ascot as we've had since Frankel. Or Frankel didn't run about for years and years. Important to get a handle on what she beat. Is that fair?
It is, yeah. I mean, whatever the numbers say, certainly from the stand, Lady Aurelia's Queen Mary performance was one of the most breathtaking two-year-old performances since Arazzi. It's then just a case of getting back and crunching the numbers to find out exactly what she did. You put a figure on it at the time of 121. That's what we arrived at. And then you adjust that as the season goes on, and she comes and runs again, and the horses she beat comes out and runs again, and you get a better idea, and suddenly the form beds down. For what it's worth, if you compare the times, she smashed the clock. You could have gone as high as you'd wanted. The only trouble was Lady Aurelia didn't come out and reproduce that form again. She won the Prix Mornay, which is a Group 1 and a higher standard of race than the Queen Mary, but she didn't produce the same sort of performance, and then she was beaten in the Cheveley Park. So the horses she beat supported the 121 level we put on the race initially. Unfortunately, Lady Aurelia was unable to build on it, so she has ended up with that figure in the classification.
And the Aidan squad, to me, improved for a run.
Yeah, that was very noticeable this year. He had very few winners first time out in maidens, so there was clear improvement from run to run. And probably, when we came to the end of the year, the deciding factor really in maybe having Churchill ahead of Lady Aurelia was maybe the progressive nature of his form. He was improving right throughout the season, whereas I suppose for a combination of reasons really, maybe Lady Aurelia didn't reproduce that Ascot effort. So that was probably ultimately, why we ultimately plumped for Churchill as the champion.
Bit of a strange year with perhaps horses not getting as many runs in as they would in other years. So finally the hardest question of all, there must be one that you might have seen just win a maiden, they won from one that you haven't rated or whatever, that you would stick a great big, this is a horse to watch. And not putting any pressure on you, but I do remember that your predecessor famously flagged up Workforce, who had won one from one as a two-year-old. What do you fancy? Is there one horse that you think you'd love to see have another run in?
Do you know what, Mike? There's a host of horses, I think, that have major untapped potential because it has been a quiet year in Britain for the two-year-olds for various reasons. But one I would flag up is a John Gosden-trained colt, Tartini. He won his only start at Nottingham back in October in what is now known as the Golden Horn Maiden. At halfway through the race, he didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was well out of his ground and green. But as he got the message, he really picked up. He made up an awful lot of ground in the finish, and the first 3 pulled a long way clear. The 4th and 5th have won since, and it really endorsed the form. I already think that performance from Tartini is very, very good. It's well into the 90s, and when you consider two of his half-brothers won the Great Voltiger, I think they hit the frame in the Derby, and one of them, Lucano, won the St Leger as well, I think we're dealing with a very, very serious middle-distance prospect.
Same question to you, Mark, finally.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to Ballydoyle, I think there are a number of horses there who have the potential to improve considerably on what they're being rated as 2-year-olds. I would probably highlight Sir John Lavery, maybe as the top of the pile. He came third on his debut in a maiden in the Curragh, running very eye-catchingly, and then backed that up, winning a maiden on pretty atrocious ground, really, in Goran Park, but, got his maiden on the board. He's well-bred, he's a Galileo colt out of a half-sister to Hawkwing, and... he looks one I would say that would improve considerably maybe for middle distances next year.